The Count has mined the planet with nuclear charges. We're all about to die.
You know something, my boy? I wouldn't be emperor if I didn't have some powers at my command.
Imperial battleship! Halt! The flow of time!
This is the emergency podcast system. This is not a test. Movies are bombing all over the country. They are posing as movies you already know. They may already be in your theaters, your neighbor's home, or even your own. Do not panic. Specialists have been dispatched. They will help you identify these pretenders and defend you against this invasion of the remake. Please stand by for further instructions.
Welcome to Remake Invasion, and I am your host, Jasin with an I. And with me today, as always, is Trush Kinkland.
Trush Kinkland.
Yeah. Good to have you with us.
It's great to be here. You know, I mean, I love how we can just, attack things from a very unique standpoint, and there's nobody like us.
No, not at all, and Sam Stepladder, unfortunately, is away this week. He's been called to his day job, so he won't be joining us this week. But instead, from the lower decks, Jeff Omega. Yeah, we can't mess up his name because you could just spell it differently, and it's still Jeff.
It's true. It always sounds the same.
Yeah,
it's with a G this time.
And I think it's time we give him a promotion.
I think so too.
I think he's proven to be one of the unkillable ensigns. So. Let's make him a lieutenant.
Ooh,
I think so, yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
I like it.
You can command all the people under you.
Yeah, I think I want him he's a liaison officer.
Yeah.
With the other Jeffs.
I'll stand off to the side, whip cracking all the guests.
There we go.
Yeah. Now that he's a regular on Remake Invasion.
Yes.
No, we of course are the Invasion of the Remake, and this week we have, if you've already paid attention when you clicked onto us, this is all about Mockbusters, and we really haven't tackled Mockbusters since our first episode.
Wow.
Yes.
Long time ago.
Well, that was quickly where I was like, no, we're not including these anymore.
Yeah, we couldn't.
That was pretty much Jeff Alpha's insistence that we do I Am Omega in our I Am Legend comparison episode.
Makes sense.
With the Mega Man, and I'm like, no, they're just bad ripoffs, man.
Yeah.
Although,
interestingly enough, though, one that I did watch was a remake because it didn't come out the same year as the movie that I watched it in, or they did the year it was the movie that was parodying.
Ooh.
So there are some remakes that are just bad.
But it kind of falls under our purview, so we're just going to talk about this phenomenon of the Mockbuster, which goes back to the golden age of Hollywood, but didn't become something a coined term until the 90s. Let's face it, the Asylum made this a big thing. The Asylum being most famous for their original content of Sharknado and sharks with multiple heads.
Yes, where the sharks just keep getting more heads, where you're going to run out of room for heads.
Or limbs. Sharktopus and things like that. They do a lot of things with sharks.
Yes.
That's kind of their thing.
I kind of applaud that, but I'm like, I just want a love story with a shark, as we discussed in our previous, just open-ended shark episode. Come on, Asylum.
Really, a missed opportunity with The Shape of Water.
Yes.
Water has no shape. Damn it.
Well, it does when you put it into a container. It's the container shape that the water becomes.
That's right.
Or you freeze it.
There you go. But then it's the shape of ice.
Yeah, but ice is still just hard water.
Oh, see? And that would have been your Mockbuster, with the shape of ice.
The shape of ice.
But it would have to have a shark.
Where the hell were you on that one, Asylum? Where were you?
The day is young.
I was thinking to myself earlier, could you just write a script and send it to them? Just look at lists of upcoming movies and send them scripts.
Well,
could try.
we've had bigger studios already rip us off, so
We have. But at least at this point, we could control the narrative if we gave it to them.
I will work with the Asylum because I would love to make one of those. I already have more experience than the filmmakers already working there.
It would be so good. I believe we can make a good one.
Now, interestingly enough, so Asylum is like the Disney of Mockbusters, and there are quite a lot of other ones, but they are notoriously hard to find.
They've become, I think, so now because the big heyday when the Asylum became big was kind of that mid-'90s era where they started. And
with like video rental stores.
Yeah, video rental stores are picking
bins.
them up. That War of the Worlds one was everywhere.
Actually, that War of the Worlds one, I was just reading this morning, was Asylum's light bulb moment where they wanted to make their own version of the movie, and it happened that they were producing it at the same time, so they wanted to release it to see if they could get a little bit of whatever off of the Tom Cruise movie.
Yeah.
But what happened was the movie rental stores ordered 100,000 copies on the title alone.
No wonder Blockbuster went out of business.
Yeah, and so they were like, well, if people are going to buy stuff sight unseen, then we'll just do that.
And that became the model, this kind of drafting off of bigger pictures to basically promote your movie.
Yeah, the slipstream of it.
It is.
Yeah.
Like, this is exactly like that small little car you see on the highway being a dick and just letting the big truck pull it along.
It's just a drafting opportunity.
And that is one of
Exactly.
the other names for a Mockbuster, is a drafting opportunity. We're going to get into some of the legalities of this, and we're going to talk about like the early days of this as well. There's one I tried to track down, couldn't quite find a copy that I thought I wanted to watch, basically, but there was a Creature of the Black Lagoon knockoff. And the creature costume is actually done by the same guy who made the Creature from the Black Lagoon one.
Oh, wow.
And the movie was called The Monster of Pedro Blancas, and this came out in the mid-50s.
I think it was the guy who assembled who manufactured the costume, and then he designed his own, because I think it was sculpted by a lady who's been getting a lot of attention this
You
year.
can certainly see elements, at least in the body portions of the costume,
Yeah.
that are very similar. The head's very different.
Oh, and you're probably going to get into this. I'll wait until you're done. I was just reading about this. It's so
go ahead, bring it up.
Yeah.
Oh, well, just with this movie, the most interesting thing is that Universal wasn't doing so hot at the time, so they thought they could subsidize a little bit of their income by letting people who used to work for the studio basically rent equipment. And so Universal basically provided all of the equipment for this movie as well.
Ooh.
And, which is interesting. I'm actually glad you did bring that up, because back in the heyday of the golden age of cinema, you had your majors, right? Producing movies for around $500,000 to $1 million. Yeah. The minors were probably floating around $50,000. And back then, some of the minors would have been like MGM, who were big studios now.
Yeah.
And then you had the minors, who were producing movies for like $5,000 or less.
Yeah.
And as Jeff said here, hey, we should have called you Jed at the beginning.
Yeah, Jed.
Jed said.
Jed Sigma.
Jed said, baby.
Damn,
Jed
I
said.
blew it. But yes, the studios, to have a steady stream filming within their sets and locations and whatnot, would be renting out the equipment as another form of income.
Yeah.
And about 75% of what was being produced at that time was from these little guys producing B and C movies, really cheap. And a lot of them wouldn't get out of their own little territories. And that still happens today with a lot of these B guys, especially the foreign guys who are knocking off the bigger movies. They don't get sued or get legal action. It's like, well, really blood from a stone, right?
Well, because you can't copyright an idea or like that. Like that's the whole concept of Mockbusters, is that someone can't copyright an idea or a title
or a noun.
Yeah, or a noun. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what it is. Like if it's like an intellectual property, like I think it had to be Transmorphers, because Transformers is technically a copyrighted,
it's a brand,
trademarked brand name. It'd be like, but I mean, it's the same thing with like Kleenex. We still call all Kleenex, but it's not all Kleenex.
No, because it's a name brand. Yeah,
because Asylum is like President's Choice.
Yeah, and we're not going to just go after Asylum here. There's a lot of like little small animation studios would kick out something really cheap, really fast, and it looks terrible, and riding usually the coattails of like DreamWorks and Disney, of course. And then you'd get something like Cars coming out and Little Cars coming out on the DVD racks.
One of my favorites, Happy Feet and Tappy Toes.
Tappy Toes. And that was actually, that's another form of Mockbuster where it originally come out under a different title. And then because they had this Penguin movie, and here comes this much bigger budget Penguin animated feature, where we're just going to rename this to Tappy Feet.
Yeah, and then you kind of mess with the wrong people. Like there was Frozen, and then like Frozen Land.
Yeah, and I actually
wrote
that one down.
Change the title back and change the cover art.
Yeah, and that originally was called Legend of Cirilla, which actually wasn't doing too bad on its own as an independently released feature, and. Yeah. Then they wound up renaming it Frozen Land, and the logo and stuff was awfully close.
It's pretty close. Like, basically, the real kicker is the swirl and the O, because all of the other letters, other than the middle two, are pretty different.
Yeah. But it was they did the logo way too close, and clearly that was trying to mislead.
And that was
people.
Unfortunately, one thing that's hard to suss out with a lot of Mockbusters, if you're doing this to watch them for fun, is there are ones that are renamed to cash in on an opportunity, and that's much less interesting than something where they have an incredibly limited amount of time and money just to make something, and it doesn't matter if it's good, just that it's done.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's some where I have to say there's a couple I watched where they did put some thought into this idea, and it's really just the title that's the difference. But what I was going to say about the Frozen one, when you're talking about the font, and that was the hugest mistake they could have made, because the other thing about it too is like you can see how sort of like the way they put the heads in there, you could basically defend that completely, because that layout of like your leads kind of looking out at you been used so much they could have completely gotten away with it.
Yeah, and when you see some of the box art on some of these, they're intentionally similar to those movie posters. I mean, they're being released the same week or maybe just a week prior to it opening in the theaters. And you've seen these at Walmarts and whatnot, small grocery stores, Redbox, etc. Back in, I'm sure lots of you guys remember it from the video store days. Now, it's kind of interesting because that model's clearly changing anymore. That where they've been able to ride that for about 15, 20 years. Streaming is taking over, and not a lot of people are buying physical copies anymore. I mean, I still do of some of the stuff I like, but there's a lot of stuff I stream now. I don't buy near as much as I used to.
Well, I mean, I buy a lot of movies.
I still do.
I still do. It's not like I used to. I mean, it was just a case of, I can go to the store, rent it for $6, $5-6, or I can buy it for 20 and watch it 4 or 5 times or more. And I've paid for the thing.
Yeah.
So I would just go buy it. Nowadays, it's like, well, it's going to be on streaming next week. Like, I'll just wait a little bit longer. So it makes me wonder how that has affected these studios like the Asylum. We do see they have a partnership clearly with Sci-Fi, where a lot of their stuff is being released to television. And I think they've kind of created their own little audience. Like, that's very in on the joke at this point.
No, it was really smart of them to branch off into their own original material, because there is diminishing returns on always doing the same thing over and over again. But I mean, the Asylum's model is mostly based off of pitching an idea of something and then people buying it based off of the concept alone.
I mean, which was your Canon Films model.
Yeah, you're doing it on low budget, and it's just based on sales. So now, if you're not getting those sales, you need licensing opportunities, and that's a big of a problem.
Asylum got into all the streaming stuff. They got into all of that really early, because they got into anywhere that they could sell their movies that people might be confused.
Well, if you can't sell it through Walmart anymore, if they were bringing in 10 copies per Walmart 15 years ago, now it's maybe 5 or less. And generally with that model, it's their cost. So when Walmart returns it back to the studio, Walmart only pays for what they've sold.
And they probably do better now with streaming than they did before with DVDs. Because there's an entire cost aspect of it that they don't need to worry about.
Yeah, I noticed a good hunk of the library is over on Tubi, the earlier stuff. Some of the later, more newer stuff's over on Amazon Prime. You don't see too much of it on Netflix anymore, but back in the early days of Netflix, they had a lot of it too. I watched, I think, all the Sharknadoes on Netflix.
Well, I think part of it was, again, Netflix was doing the video store version of it, like going, oh, we better buy this and this and this.
Well, when Netflix, the early days, they want to get cheap
as much content
to fill out. Now that they've got a lot more content, they don't need to get as much of the trashy stuff.
It's just stuff that makes your store look full.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It makes the rack look full.
Asylum itself, we do talk about Asylum they do a lot of Mockbusters, but I think what happened was like a bunch of these Mockbusters were what financed some of their original stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's part of what their business model was, to like sell the Mockbusters and then we can make a bunch of original stuff that doesn't tie in with anything.
Yeah, I think the Sharknadoes in particular benefited from that influx of cash. They're making money hand over fist. And they wound up spending a little bit more on that property once it took off. We've watched a few of these over this week, and you can see how cheaply some of these are made.
Yeah. Although there's some where cheaply making them actually makes complete sense and works actually in the benefit of the film. Like I watched, I don't know if we're getting into what we watched, but
not quite yet. We'll get there.
There was a couple where it's just that low budget thing actually ties into how that whole thing is supposed to look.
Now, public domain's another thing that kind of drives these a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Especially with the Disney stuff, because they are doing these old fantasy and fairy tale type stuff that are residing in the public domain. So when they do a Snow White, somebody else can do a Snow White.
Totally.
Yeah, you can't copyright Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast.
Good Times Entertainment was the company that really first exploited that with all of their direct-to-video, like 90s animated movies.
Yeah, actually Disney did try to sue them over Aladdin because there was a fairly clear attempt at deception through the box art. Instead of the blue genie, you had a gold one. Instead of the goatee, he had a mustache.
I mean, they sound completely different. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, you are describing two different people.
Yeah, it's a very fine line.
And the courts agreed with you. and that's how a lot of these guys get away with it. Maybe they'll misspell it a little bit, but the courts actually did agree with you, and Good Times got away with it.
Yeah.
That it was different enough that if you're paying attention, you're not going to be confused. Now, children are easily deceived by that stuff. They see the commercial, like, hey, that's cool. Well, they just miscolored them. And unfortunately, that might lead to a bad review online because, they're reviewing the actual movie instead of the Mockbuster, thinking it's the real deal. And so now you're getting a negative review on a movie that's they didn't actually watch.
Yeah.
And I can see how
vice
that...
versa.
And vice versa. Or a good review or a bad movie.
The one really big example of that was Battle Los Angeles and Battle of Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
Where, like, even at the time I remember, like, it's very confusing which one is which.
That one was really confusing. I remember that one, too. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's still in the theaters. Like, why is that sitting here not realizing just a couple of verbs in there? Changed it all.
Especially because Battle of Los Angeles sounds more like a movie title than Battle, Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And they have one where it's Journey to the Center of the Earth and Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Yeah, because of the Jules Verne.
It's the exact same title, so you can get away with that.
And I probably did see those ones when I was younger.
Yeah, well, one I watched when it came out, this is like when around the earlier heyday, when in like mid 2000s, like there was King of Skull Island, or Kong
Skull Island,
or King of
Scotland.
It was.
I'd love a Mockbuster
some sort of
that.
King Kong sort of something or other.
There was actually quite a bit of Kong stuff coming out. Like you had the animated TV series over on Netflix, which I think but didn't have a tie. I don't think to the Skull Island movie.
No.
So I think that was a different studio, but at least done fairly decently. But there was like direct-to-video stuff that it was everywhere, and I just kind of put my blinders on. I'm like, I don't touch any of this. I'm just going to watch the one movie I want to watch.
It's like everyone, because
too much of it.
The like Lord of the Rings hype train of King Kong. They were like, we got to ride this marketing bonanza.
Now, there was a lawsuit that did wind up causing a kerfuffle. And this was the Asylum again when they released
something with
Age of Hobbits.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Age of Hobbits, and Warner Brothers like, nah, we actually have license from this Tolkien family, and Asylum was arguing that this is a common word, and there was, I don't know.
Anyone who's played D&D knows that you can't say Hobbit.
Yeah, well, but I guess there was an archaeological dig of some sort where they discovered an ancient people that they dubbed hobbits. So they argued that it was a common word in usage because of this. And the courts were like, nah, they were just paying homage to Tolkien and by calling them that.
See, that's the whole thing, paying homage to Tolkien. But I mean, if you were to go the Urban Dictionary route, like hobbit feet, that's somebody with hairy feet. It's modern, it's a usage, and it is actually kind of a common word, but because of where it sprouted from, it's got that anchor to a property.
It's like pop culturally used, but the rights were still sold to somebody.
Yeah. And like if you Smurf.
And I think they wound up having to change the title to Clash of Kingdoms?
Or Clash of the
Empires or something like that. So, we can't ride the coattails of that, so we'll do it off of a classic video, like a popular video game.
That's funny. I always thought it was because of Battle of Five Armies, but...
Oh, that could have been too.
Oh, see,
the first thing I thought of was like Clash of Kings.
I didn't pay attention to the time, but I thought it was like a Clash of the Titans thing too.
So, well, see, it all applies, and that's what they're relying on is that confusion of branding.
There's one I read about. It was Aliens versus Avatars. Mm-hmm. AVP, but with Avatar blue people as well. Looks pretty fun.
And shape changers and
yeah.
I did have one on my list, but that's is an AVP rip as well.
AVH?
Yeah, there is an AVH.
I watched AVH.
Nice.
I did do that.
Almost all of them ones I watched, I kind of watched ish because I'd lose it. My attention would be lost along the way.
Only one of mine I very actively watched. You cannot look away.
Me too.
There was
one I enjoyed.
There was one I watched that was so bad. I'm like, oh, I know I'm going to tune out on this one. But then I caught myself. I'm like, holy shit, I'm laughing.
Nice.
It's that bad that I'm actually starting to enjoy it.
Well, it's one of those weird things where if it gets bad enough, you can be engaged in it and stay in it. Because you're like, okay, I get that. But if it's just a little bit above it, you'll tune out.
Yeah.
And that, it's like this weird little area. And then if it's like a little bit above that, where it's like, hey, there's ideas here that are kind of good. And then you'll stay engaged. It's that little middle area.
Yeah.
That a lot of them ended up for me. And I couldn't, it was very hard.
Yeah. Mockbusters aren't just movies as well. If you ever go to the App Store and look at pretty much any game from Gameloft is a rip-off of a more popular game.
Oh, totally. And I mean, I play all the time sort of an offshoot of like Bejeweled. It's not Bejeweled, but I still enjoy it greatly.
One thing that's always so crazy about Mockbusters that I've only really started thinking about recently in preparation for this podcast was like movies in general are kind of based off of this shyster idea of selling old rope anyway, where they're like, how can we make people just pay money for the same thing over and over again? And we only have to make it once.
Yeah, and, the sequels, and I mean...
Sequels and reboots are Mockbusters, in
Marvel
my
has made the same plot like 6 times, so with different characters. And even Star Wars got away with it. We covered that in episode 23.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of them have done it.
But,
like Halloween, the entire franchise.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of the nature of what we do. So we wanted to give these low-budget bees what Jeff texted me and called hidden gems, and I'm like, no, they're the cubic zirconia film.
Yep.
But you know what? I will still wear a cubic zirconia if it is in a nice enough packaging.
Hey, I still buy the Life brand muscle relaxant.
Me too. Works just as well. Ibuprofen it's just ibuprofen is what it says.
Now, there's
I must be the sucker who will fork out the extra $1 or $2 for the Advil.
It depends on what it is. And as a woman, I'm the only one who's going to use this. But the knockoff Midol is definitely not as good as the regular extra strength Midol.
Good to know.
All right.
Just so you know. If there's women in your lives, man, just know. Ponying up for like the cheap brand ain't going to work.
You always buy the second least expensive wine.
Yeah.
Now, before we go anywhere else, there is one other aspect that we should cover before we jump into anything, is the entire flip side of the coin of Mockbusters, which is international Mockbusters.
Absolutely. We've only scraped the surface of that a little bit, and there are territories like the Philippines and Turkey who are famous at this point for doing their versions of Mockbusters, and these ones the studios don't tend to go after because they have no money. They're done on such a shoestring budget,
and also at the time when they were released, they were only shown within the area that they were made.
Absolutely, and it's not just that. They're like, what, we're going to sue on like a foreign language?
Yeah,
like it's like we're not selling there anyway. What's the deal? Like, I mean, at the very least, if they were smart enough, they're thinking, well, if they know about this, maybe they might seek our stuff out.
Yeah, like you might get a foreign company that will put out an unofficial sequel to a bigger movie. That's how Troll 2 happened, and Troll 1's nothing to sing about either. But Troll 2, famously bad.
Italy was really huge for doing that.
Zombie.
Yeah.
Zombie 2 came out, and it was meant to be a sequel to Night of the Living Dead from George Romero. And this is like a legendary giallo filmmaker in Lucio Fulci.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty decent movie all on its own.
Well,
Well, come on. The zombie versus shark scene is worth the price of admission.
That is very true.
I'll give you the rest. Well, it's okay.
The morgue scene is pretty funny.
I think it's better than anything we watched.
Zombie
this week.
versus shark scene.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm with.
There was
Jeff
one movie that I watched that I really loved. Like, I'm a little bit obsessed.
Me too. Hansel and Gretel.
Oh no!
You know, I actually might have seen that when it came out.
Has anybody seen, I don't remember its original title, but Turkish Star Wars, it's dubbed.
I haven't seen, I want to see it.
Now, this is so blatant
Legendary.
and easily could have been sued without any problems, because they just strip stuff and project it onto screen as back screening from the original film, and the entire soundtrack is from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So they ripped off George Lucas twice.
Yeah, I mean, the movie's about 2 astronauts or something.
Yeah, it's wild, and I'm sure you could probably find it over on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah.
I'll have to I definitely got to look at that.
The one my favorite one I watched was The Amazing Bulk.
Ooh,
and The Amazing Bulk was just this incredibly, so it's very bad. And one thing that's interesting about it is that it came out, was released, kind of went out of print, and then it was rediscovered later, and then the rights were purchased by a different company, and then they re-released it because they thought it was worth keeping in print, which is really interesting.
That is interesting. But before you get into what this film's about, how about we run our first trailer?
Ooh.
I've got it lined up.
Perfect.
The Amazing Bulk.
nice.
I never saw purple blood before.
Well, this whole crime scene is one big mystery now.
There was a double homicide last night. Where'd you find it? A better question is, how'd you lose it?
We were at the amusement park, hopped a subway, and a guy popped out of nowhere and robbed us at gunpoint.
I think our Henry murdered the mugger.
General Darwin has been more than gracious with our setbacks. I'm not sure he will be for very much longer.
The government will stop funding this project unless you start showing some goddamn results.
I know you're not going to believe me, but your dad tried to kill me.
Step aside!
My father.
There is a madman by the name Dr. Kemp. We believe he is sending a rocket to the moon and plans to blow it up.
We're gonna have to take you down to the station.
It's not what it looks like.
What the hell is that?
Well, it ain't Barney the Purple Dinosaur. We're sending you there alone to eliminate. Now I shall eliminate you.
An accident. An experiment gone crazy.
An accident is wetting your bed.
Okay, you set it up, man. This was that was probably the worst thing. That was probably worse than anything I've watched this week, and clearly recorded in a hollow, empty room.
Oh, yeah.
You got to watch this trailer on YouTube, if not the whole film, because they use the cheapest fonts to overwrite the trailer. The trailer is clearly they're just in a green screen, empty room. That's why the audio is so hollow in this. And it's just everything's After Effects. The entire movie is After Effects.
Basically, what happened is the director had this idea of making a ripoff of Spider-Man that was he was going to be a horror movie, and it was going to be like a female thing that was all CG, and then the producer convinced him to do the Hulk. So what he did was, over the next 4 months, he went to a bunch of different websites and then sourced as many already made stock 3D animation environments and graphics, and wrote an entire script around entirely stuff you could buy.
Wow. It's a stock footage movie.
Yeah, it's an entirely stock footage other than the actors, and presumably the bulk.
The bulk is got the worst CG.
That's very Ed Wood. I'm kind of appreciative
It's so
of that.
ridiculous.
It is.
It's very bad, but it's very fun.
It does, but it looks deliberately bad.
There was a scene where, apparently the director said that he never set out to make a bad movie, but retroactively he now considers it a parody. So that really makes me lead to believe that he was trying to do something interesting.
Now, while the trailer was running, I told you a story because I had gone to a convention. My now ex-girlfriend had bought me a print because there was this Hulk that was there that I thought was pretty cool. And then the guy corrected me and said bulk. Now, he had it in black and white and color, and the color was purple, much like this movie. So it makes me wonder, I'm like, did he see this and make the print based on that? Or did he create it and license it to this shitty studio? Or did everybody have the same idea?
Who
and
knows?
Maybe one doesn't know the other exists.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, he's like,
a glitch
no.
in the Matrix.
But it was a good drawing, so yeah, I have it up in, I don't know, a folder somewhere.
Well, if you're talking
there's a scene where, for some reason, there's a couple guards, and they're dressed like Roman guards. And you're like, what? Why are they dressed like Roman guards? But then one of them gets electrocuted, and it's a 3D graphic of a skeleton wearing Roman clothing, and you're like, that's why.
That's why.
Oh, that's so awesome.
They're like, we need to use this somehow.
I was saying to Amelia last night that you could make a movie for however many millions of dollars the Incredible Hulk cost, or $16,000, which is how much the bulk cost.
That's it. So considering the trailer I just saw,
nice.
I think they overspent.
See, yeah, if I were to do that, if I am going to green screen everything, what I would do is I know it is a big empty space, but we're putting as much foam on the walls as possible. I will spend the money. Because a hollow sound is the worst thing. I will watch crappy CGI till the cows come home, but if I have a hollow sound, I cannot.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to say it, because it sounded like
it
so
sounds
hollow and terrible. And I'm like, I gotta convey this to our audience that this is actually how the movie sounds.
Oh yeah.
Well, and when you talk about like a whole CGI movie, it's a great idea, and it can go very badly. Like Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow is trash. I would probably enjoy this more.
I quite enjoy Sky Captain for the B-movie serial that it was based on. I quite enjoy that movie.
Oh, I tried so hard.
I mean, just to get on
I
a
was
small
so upset
tangent,
on a plane.
Sky Captain is kind of why CG is used so much in movies. Like, it was kind of an independent thing that found a lot of money somehow.
I was on a plane and I wanted it to crash.
I think it was the first all green screen movie.
So
I think it was
mad.
before 300.
Yeah,
or it was at least in production before 300.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I have my own comic book style Mockbuster here as well.
I can't wait to see which one you chose. There's a lot.
There were. There's just the first one I happened to cross because I'm like, okay, well, I hate the real one, so how much worse can this be?
There we go.
So I watched the Sinister Squad from 2016 from the Asylum. Sinister Squad, of course, based on Suicide Squad. This is actually a sequel set in the same universe as Avengers Grimm, which actually has its own sequel as well.
Oh, wow.
Oh, boy.
There's a lot going on here.
There's a wrestler in that one, isn't it?
Not this one, no.
Okay.
Kevin Nash was in one called Almighty Thor when Thor was coming out. This was the write-up on this one on IMDb reads, when a supernatural cult threatens Earth, Alice must assemble a team of fairy tale villains to face the literal forces of death. Yes, that Alice from Alice in Wonderland. That's why it's called Avengers Grimm, because they are all characters based on the Grimm fairy tales.
It's just Suicide Squad, but for fairy tales,
Yeah. So you got Alice, who's the leader of the
Sorry,
squad.
I didn't mean Suicide Squad. I meant Dirty Dozen. You know, that movie came out a long time ago.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. We got Goldilocks.
Also, Dirty Dozen were rapists.
Goldilocks, Pied Piper, Big Bad Wolf. Big Bad Wolf was clearly their Killer Croc.
Yeah.
Rumpelstiltskin was their Joker. Queen of Hearts, or Gelda, was basically their Harley Quinn. You got Bluebeard, who's a dude with knives. Carabosse was the Enchantress type of character, and then you got Hatter and Death.
Oh,
and even Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
What was it? Great.
Like, is there a concept in there that you could totally get on board
It did kind of make me want to watch Avengers Grimm, but I'm like, no, I'm going to not try to watch everything in the same franchise.
Yeah, there we go.
So it was my only one, but I'm like, I think I liked it more than Suicide Squad.
There you go.
Well, interesting.
I mean,
There's some bits where you can,
but that's not saying much because they're both terrible.
Oh yeah, but I mean, I like if I watch a bad movie, but I can see at least some effort behind it, and I'm not being patronized in a stupid way, I will watch it, which I feel that Sinister Squad probably is doing.
You know what? At the
like
end
you
of the
don't
day,
feel so terrible watching it.
If when something's made, when it's like all that matters is that it's done, something interesting is bound to happen.
Yeah.
So how many did you guys watch over this week? I
didn't get too many.
I thought I had way too many at 6, and I took a day off. But I watched like 2 yesterday, kinda.
I only watched
a
3.
few.
Where I would put it on, I'd make dinner. I mean, it really doesn't matter what happens in the middle. You can guess.
I'm gonna say there's some of them. I did some fast forwarding. I scrolled a little bit ahead because I was a bit bored.
Oh, I wish I would have had the foresight to do it, but I am one of these guys who will watch it. If I started it, I will get through it.
Yeah.
Somehow, some way.
There was only one I didn't do that for.
I played a lot of crib on my iPad.
Which one was that?
That was Hansel and Gretel. That was the only one I didn't do that for.
Really?
That one was, I remember when that one came out, that one was actually, even at the time, like the movie that it was ripping off is not even necessarily that terrible, but because both of them are kind of strange, middling, similar concepts, that this one actually did kind of pull it off better.
It sort of did. The ending lost me, but conceptually it was a much stronger movie in my brain. Mm-hmm. I'm like, this is a great idea. Let's throw some money at it. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Now, my biggest letdown, I think, well, that's saying a lot, actually. The one I was most looking forward to watching, and I'm surprised you missed this, was The Fast and the Fierce.
I was going to watch
2017.
That. Couldn't do it.
I saw the poster on it. There's cars on the bottom half of the poster and this big plane, so I'm guessing this kind of came out during Fast 7...
5 or 6?
6. It was the one with the plane chase that went on for literally ever, and it's his own B-movie moment for sure.
Yeah.
Just cost a lot more money.
Oh, absolutely.
5 minutes of that probably cost more than this movie did.
Also,
nice.
A little side note, how ridiculous is it that in this modern age you can refer to a major Hollywood blockbuster as a B movie?
Yeah, that makes $1 billion.
Yeah.
There's a schlockiness to I think it's because the term B movie is for schlockiness, not so much budget.
And
and also
the
even
Fast and
going
Furious
back to the
franchise
terms
has a lot of that.
of like the A and B movies, like in an old theater. The studios used to do this like huckster thing where they would only let independent theaters, because studios used to own the movie theaters.
Yeah.
Then they would only let independents play the good movies if they also bought a bunch of additional bad movies.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because they would usually have their A movie, the big movie was your first movie. You'd have your little newsreels or cartoons at the beginning, your A movie, and because they were always double features. There wasn't multiplexes.
That's the only way they could really stay ahead of the studio theaters is by selling quantity rather than quality.
Yeah, so you'd be a night at the theater, you'd have this double feature package with your interludes and short films and stuff as well.
Yeah.
And so that was where you'd always get to see these schlockier films after the bigger movie.
Yeah. So it was midnight
only the
features.
true diehards stayed for both movies.
Yeah. All right, so Fast...
You love film more if you watch B movies, is what I'm trying to say.
Well,
yes.
And clearly audiences do like B movies in a way, because now we're seeing B movie ideas get A-list budgets.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, the Fast and the Furious movies, as much as we love them, especially me and Trish...
Yes.
They're absurd. Huge amount of money, huge amount of box office, and they're fucking ridiculous.
Oh, Sean Hobbs. I mean, it's a superhero. It's they went bonkers on that one, but it's wonderful.
I mean, no wonder Asylum is actually doing pretty good right now.
Yeah, I mean, Tarantino's made an entire career out of making good movies out of old grindhouse movies.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They were always the B film. Or the C film.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them not showing outside of 42nd Street, you know?
Yeah.
Go to my movie trailer or go for some of those.
I think maybe I don't know. I wonder if people really enjoy, and I feel there's something that to be said for when you watch something kind of a little bit, sometimes I like to watch something that's like slick and cold and heartless, but there's an earnestness and like just a hopeful, like just exuberance about some of these B movies that just carries it through. And I feel better about humanity knowing that people are just freaking trying their hardest. And I love it. It's so inspiring.
And it made me feel good because I never, even when I was in film school, I never made anything this bad. Maybe one. So the Fast and the Fierce from 2017. Here's the write-up on Fast and the Furious and Fast and the Fierce, because I actually wrote this up and I'm like, this is more speed than Fast and the Furious. When terrorists plant a bomb on a commercial flight, the passengers aboard the plane must fight to keep the plane in the air and all the passengers alive. The bomb is rigged to detonate whenever the plane dips below 800 feet.
That's like Crash?
Oh my gosh.
And IMDb gave it a 2.3 out of 10. And it actually had a couple of faces you'll recognize, Adrian Paul and Dominique Swain.
Yep.
But they are fairly minor roles in comparison to everybody else. It's like, well, we can only get them for a day.
Yeah. Well, Adrian Paul is in another like Apocalypse Earth one that was sort of an After Earth ripoff by Asylum.
Well, you know, there's one I didn't get to watch, and I actually probably am still going to watch it, even though this morning I was like, I shouldn't watch any more of these after today. But Lance Hendrickson has been in a couple Asylum movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
In fact, this is a good setup because I want Trish to talk about the Da Vinci treasure after I run the trailer.
It's called the Sforza treasure, named after the benefactor of Leonardo da Vinci.
Mr. Da Vinci, I believe you have something to tell me.
You figured out some way to tell us his story 500 years after his death. We got 5 minutes to make the train to Athens.
See, Thomas, how?
Every clue that you get brings me closer and closer to my treasure.
Lance Hendrickson.
That's what this is. War. My war.
Last Supper.
Shoot! This is the power of God.
The Da Vinci treasure.
I told you I'd be here for the payoff.
Okay, well, lead us into the Da Vinci treasure, Trish.
Da Vinci treasure.
I actually saw the trailer for this, and I'm like, damn it, I'm a sucker for Lance Henriksen. And
me too.
I wish I would have watched that trailer before I might have actually watched this film.
And you should continue to be a sucker for Lance Henriksen, because I mean, I know it's a mockbuster, but you know what? It's a pretty enjoyable one.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's okay. You have C. Thomas Howell, also very good in this. I enjoyed him greatly, and
a couple of recognizable names. Again, sometimes they'll just like fork out a little bit more for these stars because then they get distribution, and that's a big thing for B movies. Sometimes, if you want to get on the racks or video stores, if you have a name and say they're not getting regular work, but you've seen a Thomas Howell movie, you've seen Lance Henriksen movies, you know who these people are.
I mean, it does work.
That'll sell a movie.
We will watch them on just the merit of Lance Henriksen.
Absolutely.
Because even a bad movie, you know he's going to be fine.
Yeah.
You know? And I love when I have one where we'll get to it because by request as well, it just happened to be one of the movies I actually did watch.
Nice.
Well, you'll have an actor in there who's just acting circles around the entire cast.
Well, thank goodness that they had C. Thomas Howell and Lance Henriksen so that they could like kind of balance that conflict. But there's also the woman who plays the lead. I can't remember her name. I should have written it down. She is really good. Like she is. I'm watching her and C. Thomas, and like even any other people are in the scene, I'm like going, she's good. Why is she not getting more work? Why is this the first time I've seen her?
Well, and that's the thing I've noticed about some of these movies as well is, like, I would check some of their names out, and they're starting their career here, and they get small parts on television, and they're building their names. And in some cases where a career's lagging a little bit, it can revive a career. I mean, just look what Sharknado did for
Iron Ziering.
Because, I mean, they do still have to pay the rent somehow, so...
Well, yeah, and I mean, I have a feeling, like, I know C. Thomas Howell's done more than one of these, and I have a feeling maybe if you get a movie like this where there is a little bit more freedom and to get it done... It might just be more fun for them. Like, now, it's a relaxing work vacation.
Now, what is this?
Actually,
what is this movie a riff off of?
It's the riff off the Da Vinci Code.
Okay.
Although I really enjoyed what they did with it. There was a lot going on here. Like, they really did put some effort into it. Like, the story of it, like, you have Da Vinci and he has these optics that he created a long time ago. They're supposed to be like this concave 3D glass type of deal. And then there's the Shroud of Turin, which is supposed to have, like, hidden... Like, if you look at it with the glasses, you'll see all the clues to get to, like, the Da Vinci treasure.
Now that old chestnut.
Yes. And Lance Henriksen
Hey, work for Nicolas Cage.
There we go. Well, that's what I'm saying. National Treasure is no deeper than this movie.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, when I was watching it, I had more visions of National Treasure in my head than I did the Da Vinci Code.
And the Da Vinci Code also... no deeper than this movie.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot is happening with this, but I mean, it's also really cool where you have C. Thomas Howell and, like, his love interest, but also, like, a co-worker. They have an interesting back and forth where I felt this was kind of a more equal relationship than I've seen in many blockbusters. They have this Mulder and Scully thing going on, which was really enjoyable to watch. Only she's very analytical, and it's weird. She's like the one who doesn't believe in the treasure of Da Vinci, but she's also believes that the Turin is the Shroud of Christ. Like, she's the more faithful, but yeah. And then he's also very intellectual. Like, they're both very intellectual, and they both kind of lead each other down the right
Mulder
path.
And they're both Scully.
They're both Mulder and they're both Scully. It's really kind of cool. But yeah, and they get back to the end. They have to solve these puzzles to get into the place where the treasure is.
It does actually sound really fun.
I found it fascinating watching the trailer because, you know, you'd get C. Thomas Howell in the trailer or Lance, and you're like, oh, this actually doesn't look too bad. And the trailer's put together. And then you'd get a little scene with somebody else. It's like, oh.
Yes.
Or you'd see some of the effects, and you're like, ah.
Yes. Yeah. There's several downfalls to this movie. One of them is Lance Henriksen, badass woman sidekick person. I'm sure she's a lovely lady, but oh, so bad. And not just that, I wanted to find who dressed her in this movie and just punch them repeatedly in the face. Because there's like several moments where I'm like, she should not be wearing that shirt. It's bad. All of this looks bad. Mm-hmm. I don't know who dressed her. It's bad. But there's a lot of stuff she doesn't pull off. I'm like, if she played with a little bit more, it would have been fine. Like, go cartoony, chick. Just go for it and don't try to make this a serious issue. Just realize you're in a mockbuster. And what it does is
you have to put it on the demo reel later.
Yeah, maybe. But there's another bit where it's the way it's edited. You know how they have things like London, England?
Yeah.
They do that too often.
Oh.
And like jump cuts was like shoo shoo, like you're looking through a camera. You know how they do that in movies?
Oh.
They do that a lot.
Brutal.
There's some overusage that I think if you edited it out, this would get a wide release and still do pretty good.
There's actually one thing I'm kind of interested in is, so in every aspect of a lot of these blockbusters, it's fairly inexpensive and it's quick. But on the other hand, there's a lot of movies that are saved in editing entirely, like Apocalypse Now, Star Wars as well. Mm-hmm. And, you know, might some of these movies be very good if given the right editor?
I think some of them could. I mean, it's like somebody gave this person the effects to do this, and they just got a little too much cocaine. That would be it. Mm-hmm. But it's a reasonably good movie. I was so pleased that I found it. Like, I'm like, thank you, Lance, and thank you, C. Thomas, for making me want to get on board with this movie, because I probably wouldn't have watched it if you hadn't been in it.
That's cool.
See, I didn't do near that kind of research, but I didn't want everything to be so modern, so I went with a 1978 movie,
Nice.
which thankfully Jeff actually asked me about after I'd watched it. It's like, oh, please tell me you got the trailer for this. So I'm going to run you the trailer for Starcrash from 1978, which is, well, I think you can guess which movie it is riffing off of, but this was a big thing back in the 70s.
Prepare yourself to enter a strange new world of amazing sights and sounds. Starcrash. From deep space, from the farthest reaches of the haunted universe, comes the supreme galactic spectacle. Starcrash, rated PG.
All right, Starcrash from 1978 from the studio that we hit often with Roger Corman. Clearly...
was that AIP?
I do believe it was AIP. Well, I know Roger Corman had a lot to do with financing the film. I don't know if it came out through AIP, but AIP would have been the studio at the time, I would guess. And yeah, this is right after Star Wars. And 70s and 80s in particular had a lot of like, okay, if a movie hit it big, everybody and the dog was putting out and trying
Star
to...
movies.
Star movies. And we've covered some of these already.
Galaxina
was clearly one of those movies. And we've done it with fantasy movies as well. So when Conan came out, we saw a whole bunch of cheaply made Sword and Sandals movies.
Absolutely.
And we've covered a few of those as well, so look through the library. But I thought about maybe doing a remaking episode of Starcrash. I don't think we will.
That's okay. That's okay. We've done Ice Pirates. I feel good about that.
I feel really good about that. That turned out to be a fun episode. And one where they spent a little bit more money.
Yes.
Like, really early on, opens up very much similar. You got the ships, but the ships, there was no time to paint them.
Oh, no.
So they're all very white. Detail's pretty good, though.
Well, that's good.
Including the strings that are moving them. There's only one, that opening scene
Did
where...
they spray paint them and spray paint the strings?
It's quite possibly when the shuttles were coming off of the ship after it's being attacked, these escape pods. And that's where I noticed the strings. It was,
you know what? At least they made their own special effects.
Yeah.
Practical effects.
So I'm like, all right.
That's more than can be said for the first Turkish Star Wars.
That's what we're going to get into. The IMDb write-up is an outlaw smuggler and her alien companion are recruited by the Emperor of the Galaxy, which is funny because this precedes Star Wars Emperor, to rescue his son and destroy a secret weapon by the evil Count Zarth Arn.
Wow.
This is my highest rated one at 3.9 out of 10.
Nice.
This actually has Christopher Plummer in it as the Emperor. Talk about a guy who, like, Christopher Plummer, who is this theatrically trained actor. He's given these terrible lines. And I opened the episode with one of these. And yet, acting circles around everybody in this movie. And another really early appearance as his son, David Hasselhoff, is also in this movie. Which he kind of went full circle, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. You just go, you end up back where you started. It's frustrating, but that's life. But
the smuggler chick in this, and really the alien guy, he can, anytime they didn't know what to do with the script, he just had some weird magical power who could deal around it. He could see into the future, turn invisible, he could do whatever the hell he wanted him to do. He even had a lightsaber.
Nice.
Now this chick basically was to show off her boobs. So initially she had a full body suit, but her cleavage was showing, and she is caught by the police constabulary, the space police, bounty hunters or whatever, and brought in, and she's sent to this penal colony. And everybody else is doing the hard labor in what you would think would be sci-fi hard labor suits, and she's in a bikini.
Yep.
And pretty much the rest of the movie, she's various bikini things that make no sense. I'm like, so you're doing hard labor in a bikini? You don't get it. So
that
anyway,
doesn't work.
There's an escape, and then she's recruited by the Emperor to tackle this threat of Zarth Arn and find the son.
But never able to find new clothes.
Well,
I found the sun,
she found
but not a change of outfits.
She found other change of outfits, and some thigh highs and different types of bikinis. She just couldn't find full clothing. Because they must have taken all of her smuggling money or something.
You know, I'm all for...
She only had the underwear drawer. They only had the underwear drawer left.
Well, I'm all for...
Even the spacesuits were see-through.
Look, if I had a great body, I'd love to show it off, but there's got to be some practicality here. If I looked probably like her, I would be naked a lot.
It was very exploitation, and she did look incredible.
Exactly. But if I'm doing something practical, I am going to put on a jumpsuit.
Yeah, this was just bad dialogue, bad. Ugh.
Rough.
It was really rough.
I do remember seeing that.
I had
that small chance to see it in the theater several years ago, actually.
Oh, I was shocked that it rated so high. But I think it's because it's got this weird cult status of so bad it's good. No, it's so bad it's just bad. So not remaking that one.
I was looking sort of into this as well, like, because there was another thing I listened to that did talk about this movie. When you talk about Christopher Plummer, I guess the whole point of him being in this movie is like, oh yeah, I could go over there. I could go on a vacation.
Oh yeah.
And that was the only reason.
You can pay for my vacation, yeah.
Pretty much.
It's actually a surprising motivation for quite a lot of actors these days.
Yeah. Why not?
I mean, I'll be in the territory. You can pay off my vacation.
Yeah, I think that's why Adam Sandler signed that Netflix deal.
Yeah.
Like, each movie is in some exotic location. He's just like, I'll get to go on a vacation.
Well, that's the entirety of the Grown Ups franchise, is him going on vacation with his friends, and they're just filming it. I don't think there's a script.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel like that Netflix deal was just like, they bought my soul, and it's clearly showing on the screen.
Yeah.
Well, now he doesn't have to, like, really... he doesn't have to worry about if people like him anymore. He can just make what he wants.
As he's fanning himself with loads and loads of cash.
Yeah, Netflix just funnels money straight into his veins.
You might as well just go full Marlon Brando and get big.
Could you imagine what Marlon Brando would be like in this modern age of streaming?
Oh my God.
I guess his latest one was actually pretty good. He, I guess, a pretty
or
good
him
performance.
or Orson Welles.
Mm-hmm.
That would be fantastic. Like, Orson Welles, do you think he would have kind of fallen on such, like, hard times and, like, had his addictions had taken full hold if he had a career where he could be the out-tier through Netflix? There's a possibility we could have had better Orson Welles.
You know, Netflix exclusive Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
Oof.
So
with Kevin Spacey.
What else got watched this week?
Well, so I watched... So last night, actually, I was in between the Da Vinci Treasure,
nice,
Pirates of Treasure Island, also starring
Thought about
Lance
that
Henriksen.
too. Yeah,
I looked at that. I'm like, oh, I don't have any pirates on my list.
Ultimately, I did settle on Seytan, which is Turkish Exorcist.
Ooh, that sounds really good.
Traveled abroad.
Yeah, and you know what? It is a almost entirely shot-for-shot remake with the same soundtrack as The Exorcist, and it's very ridiculous. Somebody put it very well when they said it's a good example of seeing something where you can take the same story and the same cinematography mostly, but without a good director or lighting or pretty much anything else. It's not as good. Mm-hmm. But it is more fun to watch.
And something I've actually wanted to cover for the show is the original Bram Stoker Dracula, the Bela Lugosi Dracula. And they shot that during the day, and during the evenings, the Mexican version was being shot in the evenings.
Yeah.
And the cinematography and the presentation is actually superior. So it's kind of like the opposite of what you just said. So where you actually had...
You know what? There's this great scene where they're in the hospital. You know, in The Exorcist, they're in the hospital?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, what should we do? And he says, oh, we could try all of these different things as this laundry list. And then he says, shock therapy. And then, smash cut to the girl character getting shock therapy, close up. It was very funny.
Let's just make a whole movie about that. I would watch that.
It's not great, but it was
what
fun.
What should we do in a hospital?
If you've seen The Exorcist a million times and you're kind of like, ugh, The Exorcist again?
And that's part of it is they want you to have fun if you're even going to be brave enough to watch these.
Yeah.
Now, one I watched that was so bad, but somewhere along the way I found myself really enjoying it because I was laughing at it and just having a good time with it. And I don't know how Asylum didn't get sued over this, was called The Terminators, plural. And this one, the write-up says, a small band of resistance fighters battles the cyborgs that have taken control of the planet. And it is rated 2.0 out of 10.
Story-wise, that's a ripoff.
Yeah, basically these service droids, I think they called them the TR5s. Like, boy, they're close. And they found some rip dude to play most of the TR5s.
Nice.
And he even had the Schwarzenegger, or actually it was the T2 run. Like, it's like your head doesn't
like Robert
move.
Patrick.
Yeah. That really... and he did it pretty good.
Super efficient.
Unfortunately, you had a filmmaker who couldn't compose a shot to save his life.
No.
Bad cuts. Acting's horrible in this thing. And yet, I was really getting into it because it was that bad. It was one of those that circled around from being really bad to actually being pretty good.
Nice. Oh, that sounds amazing.
So I quite enjoyed the Terminators. I don't know if I could recommend it per se.
There was a movie that I really want to find and watch, and apparently it's only been discovered the last couple years. And there was another movie by this director, only came out this past year. And so it seems like there's kind of a genre of these movies that are now slowly trickling their way into North America. It's called Shocking Dark. Did either of you come across that one?
No.
So Shocking Dark was released under the title Terminator 2, and it is a ripoff of Aliens, and then Terminator shows up halfway through. So I really got to watch it.
Wow.
And then the same director made a movie called Robo War, which is
I've seen Robo
Predator,
War.
but with a with a Terminator.
I don't think I have seen Robo War.
It's like literally Predator, but with a Terminator instead of Predator.
Well, I've got my Aliens versus Predator movie in AVH, Alien versus Hunter from 2007.
Nice. Yeah, these ones came out in like the mid-'80s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
crazy.
Okay, then
so
those might
shows
be
you this has been
worth
around a
look.
long time.
Yeah.
AVH was released 1 week prior to Aliens vs. Predator hitting the theater. So
nice, first to market.
Yeah, Fox was none too happy. And IMDb gives this a 1.5 out of 10. A galactic hunter chases down his deadliest prey in the universe. Sounds very familiar, doesn't it?
Yep.
And it pretty much is that, and all the humans get caught in the middle. One of them being Dee Pfeiffer, and the other being William Katt.
Oh my god.
And also in a shocking turn of events, Lance Hendrickson is in the official version of this one.
Yes.
Oh, it's this crossover, just this web.
And I wish I could tell you more about it, but I can't. It sucks.
Is it better than AVP?
No, this one I really tuned out on.
Oh, okay. It happens.
And to be honest, I tuned out of AVP as well, but not nearly as badly.
At least with AVP, you have some cool video game cutscenes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this one's done fairly badly. A lot more bloody, though.
Ooh.
Oh,
A lot more bloody.
Is it better than
And there's a
Requiem,
fun
then?
little gag right at the end that I won't spoil. So, yeah, not good.
So, not good. We shouldn't watch it. But
No.
you don't want to spoil it for us.
No, I say I don't want you to, but inevitably you're going to hear me tell you not to, and it's
And
like
then you're just
don't
gonna
press the
want
big
to.
red button,
Yeah.
and you're going to press it. So I might as well let you experience it the way I did, because let's
Yeah.
face it, it is Hunter hunting an alien and
There we go.
people dying in the middle. There's not much more to tell you.
Collateral damage.
It's
That's-
collateral damage. I really did kind of enjoy seeing elderly William Katt, but felt really bad about his entire career, to be honest. Because I like William Katt,
Yeah.
but he's in a lot of crap.
Yeah.
He is. His hair deserved better.
Oh, man. And, mid-60s with that trashy goatee that he had in this movie.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. It was bad.
Oh, no.
He looked like some aging hipster.
Oh, no. Yeah, like
Hippie.
the inappropriately old guy hitting on the young woman at the bar. Oh, no.
So, a little sad, but I still kind of like... I think it's the only thing I've seen him in currently, because I don't think I'd really seen much else out of past the 90s from him. So, I'm like, oh, this is where he's at now. That's unfortunate.
It's a weird juxtaposition because you're like look at William Katt in these and you feel bad, but sometimes like I look like some of the stuff that Lance Henriksen is in, I'm like going, you know what? No, Lance just owns this shit. He's like, yeah, I'm here. What about it? So I never feel sorry for Lance because I know Lance is doing fine.
Yeah. So what else did you guys watch?
I watched, well, I don't know. Do you have one more, Jeff?
Well, I watched another one this morning. It was
oh, that's right, you did.
Gunan the Barbarian, or Gunan King of the Barbarians.
Oh, my God.
So clearly Conan.
Tell us more.
Yeah, it came out the same year as Conan. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, I was actually, that's why I watched it, because there's a lot of them, but the fact that it was pretty close to the title and the fact it came out the same year was pretty interesting. And plot-wise, it's a little similar, other than it's twins that are born at the beginning who survive their village being torn apart.
Is this the Barbarian brothers?
It's not.
Oh.
Because only one of the twins goes on to be the hero of the movie.
Oh.
I thought it was a really strange story choice, and that's honestly one of the only things I remember.
Wow.
I just watched Sorceress a couple of weeks ago.
We covered that on our show.
Yeah, Sorceress is really fun.
Yeah.
And has some Italian zombies. But Gunan had some people with some swords, and they rolled down some hills.
All right. That's good to know.
Well, if childhood rhymes have proved anything, getting up that hill is really hard.
It really is.
Especially if you want to get a pail of water.
Yes.
I definitely was more into drawing a Barbarian comic than I was watching the Barbarian movie.
All right. So attempt failed at a Barbarian movie.
And then, see, this also tells you our struggles in trying to watch these things.
Yeah. But you're like going, but sometimes you're like going, if you're going to try, just go, like, try. But I mean, sometimes it's upsetting when you're like going, I hope this isn't the best they can do.
Right?
Because if it is, I'm very sad. So, yeah, I don't know. I watched a few more other than what I watched.
Please tell us about Snakes on a Train. You sent me a text about that. And I did. I tried to line up the trailer, but the trailer wasn't overly audio friendly. So
that is one I did have to kind of scroll through a little bit, because Snakes on a Train, the most challenging part of the movie is there is a lot of vomiting. And a lot of vomiting up of snakes. So if you are not good with vomit, the first little bit I was fine, but then it just happened a little too often.
Oh, boy.
And I wasn't happy about it.
Oh, yeah.
But I have to say, the ending of this movie is a good beginning of an amazing movie.
Now, is this a scene I saw in the trailer where there literally was a snake swallowing the train?
You betcha.
Okay.
Nice.
Because throughout this movie, the reason this woman keeps throwing up snakes is there's like this Mayan curse that she's been put under by her parents.
So it's pretty
back
similar
in
to
Mexico.
Snake on a Plane.
Yeah, well, sort of. But the guy who's with her, she ran off with this guy that her parents didn't want her to go off with and marry. So they put a Mayan curse on her. So she's throwing up these snakes, but he has to gather them because if they're not all there once they meet this priest in L.A., which they have to catch the train to get to, then she's not like whole again. But she ends up turning into a giant snake anyway at the end of the movie. But then there's a whole thing. If it was just the snake eating the train, I would like to see that as the beginning of the movie where a woman like Mayan curse turns into a snake. And then they're fighting the snake the whole movie. Awesome movie. Let's do that.
Is there a Sam Jackson moment?
Not that I saw, no.
Oh, okay. Outside
Not
of
really.
the riff name.
I don't think they could get away with it. Or at least I might have scanned past it. But
a missed opportunity to cast Lou Gossett Jr.
Probably.
There's a movie I've seen called Flight of the Dead, which a lot of people call Zombies on a Plane.
Zombies on a Plane.
Which is actually quite good for its derivative nature.
Sweet.
Yeah. I actually do recommend it. That one's a lot of fun.
Yeah, but yeah, so it's like I say, if they made it like a woman who turns into a giant snake, let's make that the whole movie. That's a lot more, and there's less vomiting, and that's the part I had a problem with. And then I had two more. I don't know how many more you've got. I've got two more to go.
I've only got one more.
Okay. Well, then I'll do one before yours. I watched Monster, which was the takeoff of Cloverfield.
That's not the Gareth Edwards one.
That's actually really good.
It is, actually. That's what I was saying. It was not too bad. It's Monster 2008. It's in Tokyo.
That's crazy. I had no idea that was a Mockbuster.
Well, it showed up on my list as a Mockbuster, and it has the same kind of cover art.
It's weird, but
it's very
It
close.
actually precedes Godzilla.
Yeah. Well, no, because
it's a Cloverfield.
Oh, it's Cloverfield. Okay.
It's a Cloverfield.
Well, it is
because Monster is directed by Gareth Evans.
Yeah,
who did Godzilla.
and it is shot with that first-person perspective. It's actually quite a good movie. I think it was just because giant monsters are making a comeback, and that was a good way to sell your movie.
And like I said, if you look at the two cover arts side by side, I put it under the Mockbuster territory.
Man, so accidental, fairly big director.
Yeah, well, yeah, because it's two girls who go to Tokyo, two sisters, and they've decided to make a documentary on global warming, but end up being caught in this whole thing where the monsters are coming out.
Well, sometimes these ones that spend a little more money, and I mean, that was done fairly on the cheap, but it looks good. And then there's something like Mac and Me, a clear ripoff of E.T., and a giant commercial for McDonald's.
Yeah, that's when a corporation tries to get into mockbusting.
You know, it doesn't fall in that B category because they spent some real money to try to get that movie going.
And actually, I have seen Mac and Me, just FYI, but not for this. I just happened to have seen it.
I debated watching it for this, but it's like, no, that movie is in its own league.
Yeah.
We've done it. Once you've done Mac and Me, you're done.
Yeah. If I willingly watch Mac and Me, it's over for me. It's over.
But I was about to say found footage-wise, found footage is really great for any sort of mockbusters because it is kind of, it lends itself to, you can cheaply make it, and all you do is put the effects in, like the camera's jostled or the camera falls or...
Paranormal Activity was a big one, obviously, in horror. And didn't you watch Paranormal Entity for one of our 31 Days of Horror?
Paranormal Entity...
Yeah, is Paranormal Entity found
No,
footage?
I didn't actually get to... I watched all the Paranormal Activities.
Believe it is.
Interesting.
I watched all the... I was going to watch Paranormal
No, but
Entity.
I thought from the previous years.
Oh, The Entity is just a 1980s straight up.
Oh,
it's not a ripoff.
No, I thought you'd seen it, but yeah, Paranormal Entity is a mockbuster of Paranormal Activity.
I'm surprised they didn't do a Blair Witch one.
There's a porn parody, which... Porn parodies kind of fall under this category.
I'm like, they'll
parody their own
one,
movies,
but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, there's so many of these movies where I'm like, I can see where the porn could go in here.
Actually, when we were watching The Amazing Bulk, Leah was just like, when is this gonna be soft? Like this is basically just softcore porn, right? It's gonna be porn at some point.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like. This is going to. There is a really weird blindfolded a woman like touches Bulk's penis and is like, ooh. There's a lot of points where you're like, this is basically, it could be porn. They could just go a little bit further.
Exactly. Well, you know what?
It's like, where's the better, longer version of this movie?
It could be the version of it where there was...
The better, longer...
Just because I know about this, there is a movie called Pirates where it was made as a porn movie.
And they re-edited it to R.
Yeah, that was like the highest production porn movie ever made, I think.
Absolutely.
At the time,
There's CGI skeletons in it.
You know, that big penthouse one with the big actors.
Was that Latex?
It was the big historical epic.
Caligula?
Yeah, Caligula.
Oh, Caligula, yeah.
Yeah, although that wasn't intended to be... Well, at least the actors didn't think it was. Because they did the porn afterwards. But, they did that, and I was like going, maybe there is... I would like to see this done with more movies.
Well, I think they also did that with...
I've seen the porn version of that movie.
Oh, so have I.
And I mean, edited down, you're like, yeah, this is actually pretty entertaining.
It really is.
I think a number of the parodies come with, like, as a special feature, the clean, quote-unquote version.
Nice.
Now. Because I've seen the Batman one, actually. And that one edits together pretty nicely.
Wow.
It's like a actually really good parody.
And to be honest, you take out all of the boring sex stuff, and let's face it, the porn parodies, they don't even try on the sex that much. But they do try on the costumes and stuff. So if you can just cut it down to the plot sequences, now you got like a half-decent 45 minutes.
Well, and I mean, these actors, they're probably going like, this is my chance to do some acting on a set.
Yeah,
that's my
a little
chance,
bit more
guys.
fun.
Occasionally, 1 out of 100 will jump into the mainstream, like Sasha Grey.
Or even at the very least, it's a chance to have a little bit more fun at work than normal.
Oh my god, yeah! Like you, at this movie, you're like going, I don't have to bone so much today.
I don't have to have as much sex today. Today, I get to act.
Like, I mean, I kind of wonder if like
because the sex really sucks.
the way that it would match up to an office job is like sometimes the sex becomes so repetitive, it's just the filing portion. And today you get to work on a project and not file all day.
I feel like I would have been more entertained if I watched more porn parodies parodies for this instead of the straight-up Mockbusters.
One thing that's really interesting
That's
with
gonna be a
both
Patreon
is, both of them get a description and basically a title, maybe a poster, and then say, what can you figure out from this? The only difference is with the porn parodies, they can get away with a lot more, like, legally wise in terms of closeness to what they're ripping off.
Yeah, because they're protected by parody law.
Yeah, because they're not trying to trick people into thinking it's actually the movie.
No.
I mean, that would be hilarious.
Well, because you can't pick it up in a mainstream store. It's not going to be in the bargain bin where the kids can pick up their kids' films. So if you're seeking this out, you are seeking out an adult film. You cannot be fooled.
Like, as a script writing exercise, like the Batman versus Superman one or whatever, like, the person had to have watched the trailer, and then every information that they knew about it, they were like, well, we have to tie it in. Let's reverse engineer this baby.
Yeah.
And that's pretty interesting. But that's, like, kind of why I admired The Bulk, is because just as an exercise, it's a hard work to do.
When you talk reverse engineering, I know this isn't a Mockbuster, it's kind of like we're going on a side street right now, but when you're talking about, like, engineering a movie from just, like, an idea and just building it up like that, like with all the stock footage, there's a movie called The Wedding Date, and I know people like it, but I have a problem with it, and that's because there were 3 lines. I know this writer was like, I just want to put it in a movie, and then just wrote a whole damn movie around it.
Nice.
He's like going, this would be so romantic if somebody said these 3 things. And then we'll just make a movie around it, because you can tell.
The music sitting on his entire life.
It has. The music swells, like the camera's like just really it's fucking these people hard, and all like every time these lines are delivered.
There's just
fucking
Vaseline dripping down the lens.
Pretty much. Like I can
too close.
I can see the writer's word come happening. I can see it.
I feel like I need to underlay some cheesy music right now.
That's our new phrase. That's a t-shirt, word come.
Instead of, let's forget word vomit. Nobody wants vomit.
No,
nobody
word
wants
come.
vom.
Some people want cum. This is not a very family-friendly episode.
We don't.
They usually aren't.
Sorry, all of the children who I didn't realize up till this point that it wasn't a family-friendly
fell on this show that's clearly marked explicit.
Yeah.
Today a little more so than others.
Absolutely.
I got one last one on my list here, and that was The Atlantic Rim, which must have gone.
How was it?
I'm glad you watched it, because someone had to.
Yeah, someone had to, and it did go through a name change a little bit later in life. You can now find it as From the Sea, but I found it under its original title on Tubi, so it is out there. And yeah, it's bad. These giant robots were actually developed more for deep sea exploration rather than combat.
Okay.
But when these monsters are arisen because of these deep drilling sites, then they're brought in to defend. And we've got Canadian treasure Graham Greene in here.
Oh my
really?
God, I love him. But now I can't watch this.
And Anthony Treach Chris. There's actually some of the performances aren't too bad in the movie itself. But there's one guy who goes against the military instructions and stops this monster, even though there's been lots of collateral damage. He tries to shoot it, and then he takes out this entire building after getting all these other people away from the beach. Too bad nobody in the building would have known that. So he is put in the stockade, which is a really big room.
Okay.
And that is most of the movie, is him in this room and people coming to visit him. That's kind of how I remember this movie more than the monster battles.
I couldn't imagine there would be too many monster battles.
Yeah.
No, because, I mean, you're going to keep the CG short. I mean, it's bad, but it's not as bad as your bulk one.
Yeah. Transmorphers is not bad. I've seen... They released that Wolverine movie with worse CGI than the Transmorphers movie.
Well, isn't Transmorphers actually directed by, like, Stuart Gordon?
I don't know that.
I don't know, but I have to say it's interesting.
Looking it up right now.
Yeah. And Transmorphers, that one had, like, a sequel...
It had, yeah.
2 sequels, because I almost watched Hornet, which was their more recent rip-off of Bumblebee.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's weird to see, like, there's enough of these that they're doing, like, trashy versions of big screen movies, and now they're getting their own sequels and becoming their own franchises.
Well,
and I don't know. I mean, most of the Transformers movies are pretty bad.
Oh, they're bad.
So how much worse are these Transmorphers
movies? Isn't... That's another one I kind of watched mostly. I only kind of checked out maybe a couple of times. It's not too bad. Basically what it is it's a Transformers movie if there were no Autobots and it was just all Decepticons.
Okay.
And it's the humanity has been driven underground and they're trying to fight back, and there's this one guy who's put in like stasis and brought out and to fight the robots, but then he finds out then there's like a Terminator Terminator Salvation thing where he doesn't know he's a machine at the end.
Yeah, I had that one of those actors in Terminators where he didn't realize he was a machine until later, and one of his creators was actually one of the humans he was protecting.
Yeah.
Inevitably sacrifices himself to save humanity.
Yeah, he does this whole sacrifice thing, and it actually is pretty good. This movie
writes itself.
Well, and they do something interesting that I think...
It's the exact same movie, just different characters.
True, but they do something interesting that I found kind of a little bit refreshing, where this guy has like a really antagonistic relationship to the woman who's in charge, like the general. But the problem is because they were both dating the same woman. But now she's married to the general and has been for 5 years while this guy's been in stasis. I like that that's how they did the triangle. Like the love triangle. It was really good. But it's actually not a terrible movie. Like,
well, not terrible is the best you can hope for.
And it wasn't Stuart Gordon. That was Robot Jocks. I was thinking
Robot Jocks.
But
I like
this movie,
Robot
interestingly enough, same director as Pirates of Treasure Island and King of the Lost World, which I mentioned earlier.
So... no, they get trapped into making more of these things.
And also, he made a movie called The Hillside Cannibals the same year that Hills Have Eyes came out, the remake.
See, I don't know if I want to make one of these now, because then we just get trapped in this vicious
We never
cycle.
know. I think, if we're far enough away from it, they can't find us.
See, what happened between... Like, there was Roger Corman. He was basically doing the same thing, and everyone... seemed to just get amazing careers. Not everyone. A lot of people, though, out of those movies. And much less out of this new mock-busting era.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can be the people who do it. Because there's... Okay, Hansel and Gretel was the final one that I watched. And it was pretty good. When I say the one that I watched fully and was totally engaged in, this was it.
Sweet.
Because they did it where it's a modern retelling of the whole thing. Dee Wallace runs a little bakery restaurant called the Gingerbread House.
Dee Wallace is a treasure.
She's a treasure in this. Holy crap. This movie has Sweeney Todd essences to it with little elements. It turns into Texas Chainsaw at several points. It is a mishmash of all sorts of things. Dee Wallace... She's always intended on like eating Hansel, but like Gretel, she's trying to like make into like, she wants Gretel to be like her daughter and part of her family and carry on this whole thing of like cooking people and making them into pies. She's really a psychopath who's like put all her hopes on this young girl because she thinks she knows who she is. Like it's a very incredible modern retelling. And I have to say what they did with it, I was completely on board with.
And sometimes you can get something good. Like, when they're conceiving a Mockbuster, they don't usually even have a trailer. They just know this movie's coming, and they may have a mock-up of a poster or even the full poster promoting this. So they've only got a few months to put this together, sometimes a few weeks. And to come up with a full script on what they think this movie might be, and that's just it. They don't have the plot, they don't have spies, they're just developing it on what they think this movie might be.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes they come close, sometimes they come up with something fairly unique, or it's just... Or they'll just pick some generic plot, and then it's Transmorphers or Terminators or AVH. And, like, you'll get it recycled a lot, but big studios do that too.
Exactly. I'd say the only downfall of this movie was, like, if you, once they escape the witch and the witch is dead, turn it off or walk away. And then you're good. And the cover art on this is like the font is basically the exact same as Hansel and Gretel.
Yeah. Well, Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters is the official one.
Yep.
Which also sounds like the fake one. Like that's a worse title.
Yep.
And I kind of want to go back to this weird Avengers Grimm universe, because Rumpelstiltskin, where I left him off, he is now the ruler of the afterlife.
At the very least, it's got to be better than Once Upon a Time, right?
Yeah.
Sorry if I offended anyone who watches it.
I watched most of it, and it was a guilty pleasure at best.
I couldn't get in. I could watch a bit of Once Upon a Time. I couldn't get into the universe. I don't know what was wrong.
As it started embracing the fact that Disney actually owned ABC and they were pulling more from Disney, I actually wound up liking it more because it was like, well, now it's just an Easter egg TV show.
Yeah, it's just the incredibly accessible Ready Player One.
Oh yeah, and you know, the whole time I'm watching it, I'm hating it at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, you guys were developing Fables, and they were like, wait a minute, we don't have to pay anybody for licensing fees for Fables. It's all public domain. We'll make our own, and we've got our own versions of this stuff. And you know, screw that comic book guy.
Yeah, I guess. Wow.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not the talent; it's the idea that is the winner.
Yes.
Yeah, so even big studios do it.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like some of these Asylum ones, the idea was actually kind of a winner. Like Hansel and Gretel, this idea was a winner compared to the other the other one.
Well, I mean, they got a whole TV series with Z Nation, which is basically World War Z. So they got themselves a TV deal with that one.
Yeah.
And even classic favorites like Battlestar Galactica
Totally
was capitalizing on Star Wars.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But
Battlestar
did
Galactica got into like legal trouble with Star Wars.
I mean, you can see it. It's there. It's like, there's a lot of similarities here. They just take away the fantasy aspects of the Jedi and the Force and all that, but it is essentially the same.
Okay, well, I have a big question for both of you. What's your preference, Cylons or Stormtroopers?
Oh, I've never seen
in the original, like the
Battlestar Galactica.
Cylons.
They were so good.
So cool.
I thought that's true. They do have really good design.
I mean,
but Stormtroopers
look awesome too.
They do.
But
I feel like Stormtroopers look really, really good as a unit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Individual ones, not so much.
I like the Cylons, but they do look like guys in suits.
Yeah.
Where at least the Stormtroopers are guys in suits.
Yes.
At least you're being honest about it.
They're like, hello, Dave. Why don't they put a railing on this thing?
Well, I'm out of Mockbusters that I've watched. I could only stomach so much, and I could barely get through the 6 I had.
I know, and it's sometimes, like I say, I did scroll through some of these, a little bit of fast forwarding, but...
You know, and it's interesting because it's just a product of like a consumable culture that we live in, where you watch it and you maybe enjoy it or not during the time, but at the very least you escaped for a small amount of time, and that's mostly what, or a lot of people, that's all they're looking for.
Oh, wait, sorry, and one more thing. I hadn't watched any of these, but I just thought I should bring it up. Okay, you know how they had Kung Fu Panda?
Oh yeah. Oh, we didn't even touch on the animated ones. That's part.
We talked a little bit about it.
Yeah, Kung Fu Monkey, Kung Fu Dog, Kung Fu Rooster,
Chopkick
Kung
Panda.
Fu Rabbit. They are all named Kung Fu and animal.
I saw a bunch of I saw I don't know if it was, I think it was Karate Panda, or whatever.
Why Kung Fu Panda, more than any other animated movie, seems to have spawned so many.
Yes, a ton of Mockbusters.
Yeah, we talked about some of the fairy tale stuff, but we didn't talk about that one.
Yeah,
and that one's got a lot.
Because the Shrek has a lot, but doesn't hold a candle.
I watched a couple of trailers for them. Like, I can't do it as an animation fan that I am. I'm like, I can't do these. They're unwatchable to me. The trailers were unwatchable. So
well, like when I was, it ties into. It doesn't matter if it's good, just that it's done. But extrapolating that onto animation is quite a concept. Like, hey, animate a movie in a couple days. Probably is with the Good Times Entertainment.
Exactly. Well, I think it's because maybe they're aimed at children, and they aren't as discerning sometimes.
Yeah, kid will click on something that looks.
They're
cute.
like, "This is bright colors, and it's got stuff and a little bit of music. We're good."
Kung Fu Panda, it probably had 300 or more animators over 4 years to make that thing.
Yeah,
and whatever other derivative was probably 6 months and 12 people.
Yeah.
And just so they could ride in the coattails and the draft, if you will, of a bigger film.
There's a Ratatouille.
There was one, and I'm trying to remember.
It's like Fighting Panda something, where he's a dancer.
There were a couple of actors who were buddies, and one guy was in the A movie, and the other guy was
Battle Los Angeles.
That was Battle Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And because they were friends, they both wound up going and promoting at the same time on the same shows and stuff, and promoting both their versions.
Yeah.
Because they're both fans of it.
I can't remember, but there was a joke about how neither of them could keep straight which version they were in.
Well, to be fair, all they're really kind of looking at is a punctuation. So that's kind of what's going to hold you back.
The word of.
without in a world of autocorrect, I can see how you'd lose it. Because that would be very tough. But that sounds amazing. Because it's sort of kind of fun. I'm surprised there aren't more people who have friends who've been in the animated versions.
Oh, it was Kel Mitchell, by the way, from Battle of Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
He was the star of the Mockbuster, and his friend was in the original. They don't name who that friend was, but
nice.
They both were quite amused. And
That's awesome. Can you imagine that phone call? It's like, dude, so I'm going to be doing like this Battle Los Angeles movie. Hey, I'm doing Battle LA.
I'll see you on set. No, not the one realizing they're not.
And they're going like, hey, where's so-and-so? No, he's not on this movie.
I feel like the next untapped opportunity in terms of Mockbusters is to not only be on a level in which you're fooling the audience, but you're fooling the agents of the actors involved.
Yes. Oh, honey, we got you a blockbuster.
There was one I wanted to watch. It's so new. Like, I saw the poster for it, and I don't remember what it's called, but it's basically the Asylum version of Stranger Things. But it was still in post-production right now. So, unfortunately, I'm aware of it, but I'm like, it's not done, so I can't talk about it on the show. There's nothing to see. But
one thing that I've noticed a little bit in culture is everything is pretty volatile right now. Just to go on a small tangent, we'll come back.
For sure.
Fallout 76 just came out, or a while ago. New Fallout game, online multiplayer. People hate it. They really crap the bed. But there was another company that released a game, The Outer Worlds. It was the company that made Fallout New Vegas.
Okay.
And basically, just because they released it at the same time as a fairly close counterpart that everyone hates, everyone just loaded over onto the other one. It became a huge hit.
Oh my God.
Recently. And that's another thing that I think about with these Mockbusters is with something like Stranger Things. Another season of Stranger Things comes out, I could see it being something people would universally hate if it was to go a certain direction.
Well, they're going to have to tread carefully because the kids are going to be adults by the time another season comes out. And
could you make another version of something that's supposed to be a ripoff that people like better?
I don't know. They've kind of made a formula for it. I mean, you watch that new Ghostbusters trailer and everybody's comments are, it looks like Stranger Things. I'm like, well, is that a bad thing? Is that a bad way to make that movie?
Yeah, I mean, Stranger Things looks like a lot of things from the 80s.
It does.
I don't know. It's one of those things. The people who might hate it would be like, I've been fooled before. I will not be fooled again.
Well, that is the whole point of the Mockbuster, is to fool people, and at least a small portion of people, to try to get their dollar.
Fool me once to the tune of $15.99.
You know what? It is cheaper. So apparently Redbox is still around. Apparently that's in the States, not in Canada. Okay. But some people, they would rather pay the very small amount of money to watch the crappier version than to pay for a movie ticket.
True.
That's like also this weird aspect of the whole thing.
Well, that's the other thing about it too. Sometimes I'll watch, like, again, the big, like, Battle Los Angeles or Battle LA. Which one was the big one? I wasn't going to pay money to go watch that. But I will pay cheap money to go watch the cheap knockoff because, I mean, it looks like a mess. Like, it looks like just a trashy mess I don't want to pay for.
I've seen the expensive one, and it is an expensive mess. So I can't imagine the lower budget one's going to be any worse.
Yeah. You got it's the law of returns. You're like going, how much? Okay, I can spend this much money for this quality, or this much money for this quality. When am I going to get the most bang for my buck?
Yeah, I mean,
people are thinking
budgets
about that.
Always will lead in good returns. They will at least make their money back every time.
Well, I was watching they did like a little Vice article on Asylum, and they did say Asylum had a funny thing where they're like going, what's really strange is sometimes with our Mockbusters, if they do badly, the movie they're parodying does badly.
Totally.
He's like, I don't know, we might be the canary in the coal mine, I think, because like we do it and it goes badly, then that should tell them something.
Well, you might be onto something there.
Oh yeah, that's what the guy who runs it says. So I'm like going, maybe.
I wonder how Aladdin panned out for them, and also how did Aladdin pan out? People just talk about stuff, and then you never hear about how it does.
Well, Aladdin's budget was like, I think, was it Because he talked about it in the article. I think
Yeah.
it was only like 150 or something like that. He's like, that's the catering budget on the remake. But he's kind of like, well, the 150, we might make that back. And he's like, plus he goes with the whole thing where you're saying is like, there is an audience for this. People sometimes do just want to watch what we do because they want to see our version of it. And they'll go into like getting picked up by like a TV channel or like a cable channel just to like fill in the gaps. And that's where their money's coming back. And I mean, considering how much they put into it, he's like, we'll generally just make money.
Yeah. And, that's where that model's going to be now because, people aren't buying as much in the shops anymore and Walmart stuff. But it'll be interesting to see how the genesis of the Mockbuster changes with these new mediums and these new streaming services. Like something like Tubi with the advertising can't pick up a whole lot of big budget stuff right now because of the higher licensing.
Yeah.
But, I'm already seeing more and more of that. And I did notice that all the ones I watched on Tubi didn't have advertising.
You know what? I also...
some of mine did.
Come to think of it, you're right. The ones I watched on Tubi didn't have advertising.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. The TV series do. They've got TV series on there which are like old 90s ones.
Yeah,
and
there's been other movies.
Nostalgia's going to bring you in there.
But like
bigger ones.
not the Mockbuster
Not
ones,
the Mockbusters, though. So I'm not sure where the revenue's coming from on those.
Yeah, I wonder if Asylum or at some point like owns the Tubi or something.
Well, that makes me wonder if there's at least an interest in that streaming service because I mean you got to figure they made money hand over fist on these things.
Also, we're not sponsored by Tubi, but if you love Mockbusters, not only are pretty much a lot of Asylum ones on there, but like a lot of the older like Italian knockoffs are on there.
Most of the Full Moons are on there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Like for B movies, really, Tubi's free. That's great.
Yeah.
And you know what? There's some good, enjoyable B movies that you might be like, oh, I remember watching this a long time ago. Go to Tubi. It might be there.
All right. Well, I think we have had...
Tubi sponsor us.
We have had enough. We've definitely had enough of the Mockbusters.
We have.
I don't want to do this for a very long time. But this was a fun... and almost an agonizing episode to put together for the terrible movies we had to sit through. But it was worth talking about because people have asked me before, why haven't we covered this? Why haven't we covered this? And thankfully, Remake Invasion came along to
do this for
us, and I appreciate that entirely. So
writing the draft of the phenomenon, that's the
Invasion of the Remake.
Exactly.
It's been an educational episode. Yeah, no, they're so good.
Yeah, they are. They're so
we wish
good.
them nothing but the best. We're doing our own thing. It's nothing. It's a homage.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an homage, but go subscribe to that channel and subscribe to Invasion of the Remake on all your favorite podcast platforms. And you know what? Follow them on their social media. We're too lazy to do social media for Remake Invasion. No. But you can find Invasion of the Remake at Invasion Remake on Twitter. And I've heard you can also find them on Instagram and Facebook under Invasion of the Remake.
And you can email them, I heard.
Yeah, Invasion of the Remake at gmail.com.
You mean even if you have questions, you could just email them?
Questions, queries?
Well, we don't even do that.
I know.
No.
At Remake Invasion.
In fact,
because we are a bit of a cheap knockoff. We don't have the time or the budget.
No. So, in fact, I can't see us being able to do this again. But hopefully Invasion of the Remake will be back next week to continue what they do best.
Exactly.
And we do mediocrely.
And if we get the funding, we can do just maybe one more in the future.
Maybe an all-animated special.
There we go.
Oh, no.
And a Mockbusters.
Yeah.
Well, join us next week when the real Jasin, the real Trish will return. And I do believe Jeff Omega will be back.
Yes.
Bringing along Amelia Alpha.
Absolutely.
Sam will be stepping out again next week. But
he's been sent down to the planet to investigate.
We'll be doing our romantic comedy for Valentine's Day. And Trish picked a good one from...
We did.
Yeah.
One that I think that you will be okay getting through.
I hope so.
I think you will.
After this week,
it'll be interesting because Amelia's seen it 1,000 times.
Oh,
I know you have.
Yes.
I've never seen it before.
I'm
I
not
know
sure
Jay
I have.
hasn't.
I don't think I have either.
So it'll be a fun one for us to discuss.
Yeah.
I think you'll be good. You'll be good.
And then Sam will be returning for the final 2 weeks of February, where we will be getting into some women in horror.
Yes.
Because it is also Women in Horror Month this month.
Gonna be awesome.
So join us next week. Till then, I've been Jason with an I.
I've been Trush.
I'm some Jeff, but it's not brand specific.
He's the president's choice of Jeffs.
It's pretty good.
Life brand Jeff.
And we are going somewhere else.
Well, it's done. It's happened. The stars are clear. The planets shine. We've won. Oh, some dark force, no doubt, will show its face once more. The wheel will always turn. But for now, it's calm. And for a little time, at least, we can rest.